Road tripping with the Gamecocks through March. Elijah Campbell covering the USC women at the SEC tournament in Greenville. Sponsored by Griffin Pools and Spas, Lexington. On the Game Network, the 107.5 The Game app, and at the Game TV radio on YouTube.
All right, good morning. 107.5 The Game crew. I'm Elijah Campbell here with obviously the game from the early game from 6 to 9 during the week. And you can hear my coverage here on the Game TV radio on YouTube and sporadically throughout the weekend on 107.5 The Game. And our coverage brought to you by Griffin Pools and Spas. They make you feel good. And what's making us feel good this morning is waking up and knowing that South Carolina and LSU get to play again. It is part 2 of this matchup between the Gamecocks and the Tigers. And I hesitate to call it a rivalry because you win 18 straight in this series. I don't know if you can call it a rivalry. Usually the whole rivalry thing kind of hinges on whether or not both teams in the series actually end up winning, but it's been pretty one-sided. But there's a lot at stake today. Not oftentimes do you get a top 5 matchup in the semifinals of your conference tournament, but that's what we have today, right? And there's been a lot of craziness in this tournament in Greenville so far between what LSU did to Oklahoma yesterday, which we'll get into here in a little bit, and what Ole Miss did to Vanderbilt. I mean, absolutely coming out of the gates red hot and beating them like a drum. It has been a wild SEC tournament, and it can only get wilder here with a game like we have today. The last time these two teams met, I'm going back into the memory bank, right? The last 2 times that these teams met in Greenville, it was for an SEC championship. We had a fight. We had extra basketball. We had players getting ejected to where I think South Carolina and LSU did not have more than one player on the bench available. I don't think LSU had anybody on the bench available during that overtime period. And it was one of the stories in the sport. Fact check it. LSU is number 6 in the country. For some reason, I was thinking they were top 5. But it's top 6 matchup here today in the SEC tournament. But man, there is so much intrigue with what is going down in this game today. And even just to start, we know what South Carolina did yesterday, demolishing Kentucky with an 87-64 win, really running away with it. If you missed my recap, go back to this page and watch the rundown from yesterday where I kind of broke it all down. Joyce Edwards having a big game, tournament Tessa coming back into form. But what LSU did when we're breaking down this opponent for today, what they did to Oklahoma was mightily impressive. Now, in the first half, it was interesting because Oklahoma shot the ball poorly. They shot like 25% in that first half, and they were only down, I believe, 9 at one point late in that half. I think we were about halfway through the second quarter, and it was a 9-point game or an 8-point game, and Oklahoma was only making 25% of their shots. Reagan Beers only took 2 field goal attempts in that first half. And I'm sitting here thinking, how are they only down 9? And I thought maybe that's a bad sign for LSU. But they only put their foot on the gas, outscored them by 11 in the third quarter. They scored 40 points, LSU did, in the fourth quarter, a 40-point fourth quarter to make it 112-78. And it's the second most points ever scored in a game in SEC tournament history. And that shows you the height of what this LSU team could be. When we saw these two teams play in Baton Rouge, a little more defensively oriented. Game was in the 70s. It was a much tighter game, much more low scoring than what LSU's been accustomed to this year. They've been a machine. A lot of games over 100 this year for LSU. They play up tempo. They play fast. It's the number 2 efficient offense in women's college basketball. And the reason that things kind of broke free yesterday was because Oklahoma's tempo does kind of invite that type of play, that it invites, early 3-pointers in the shot clock, a high volume of threes. And LSU took 24 yesterday, but made 13 of them, right? You make 54% of your threes in any given game. you are going to end up scoring a lot of points if you shoot a good deal of them. Oklahoma did not make theirs. Credit to LSU defensively for making them shoot tougher threes. They ended up making 24% of them. And I think that was a big difference in that game, was just how well LSU was able to at least get enough stops in a breakneck pace of a game while also just making it rain from beyond the arc. LSU was really dominant in that game yesterday, and they're going to have to carry that over, right? If you're an LSU fan and you're watching this game, you're hoping you didn't waste all the 3-point acumen that you had yesterday and not have any today, because you're going to have to do that against South Carolina. And if you're the Gamecocks, if we're looking at it through the Gamecock perspective, you have an opportunity here not just to get another win on the resume, which would give you a serious contention for the number 1 overall seed. I don't think that's completely out of play, especially if you end up beating LSU today and say you play Texas tomorrow for the SEC championship. Those are 2 really big wins to be able to add to that resume and really make it a consideration between you and UConn and UCLA. But I look at this matchup right now, and to me, it's kind of the same as it was when we had this discussion previewing the first matchup in, last month on Valentine's Day between these 2 teams. Can South Carolina control the pace? Yesterday, they wanted to up the tempo because they were playing a team that was on game 3 in 3 consecutive days. You wanted to up that tempo and really make, Kentucky have to play fresher than what they were. In this game, that's not going to exist the same way. You and LSU are on the same type of rest. This is game 2 in 2 days for both of you. And LSU is going to want to get out and run. I mean, we've seen Mylasia Fulwiley play. When she subs into the game, she's going to want to go out there and play a fast-paced game. And South Carolina can play that with them. That's one of the reasons why I love the South Carolina team so much. It's because they do resemble a little bit of basketball chameleon in them, where they can play in different styles of games. They can play with different varieties of teams and still be able to find ways to win. And I think you saw that in the last game of the regular season against Kentucky, where the pace was slower. It was more of a defensive slugfest, and they were still able to do enough to be able to win that game. But the most important players in this game, to me, for South Carolina, it's going to be the bench unit again. And I was very, very complimentary of them yesterday. I think it's one of the reasons why you're able to win that game by 20-plus points, because you got great minutes from Maddie McDaniel. You got really solid minutes from Miriam Dowda. Isla McDowell didn't check into the game till later, but you got really good minutes early on from Agat McKeer. I think Gotti's got to be really big in this game too. And when you look at how South Carolina won that game against LSU on Valentine's Day, yeah, Tessa Johnson was unconscious from 3 in the first half, but LSU just stuck on her like white on rice the entire game. They pretty much face guarded her all throughout the floor, to the point where, she was even getting pushed out of bounds on the baseline, and it got really physical. But what that did was allow South Carolina to take advantage of driving lanes. So the other guards like Raven Johnson were able to give you, good buckets. It helped Tania Latson's game a little bit. And you saw Isla McDowell hit a really big shot at the end of the clock in the third quarter. And that was really big for that South Carolina team. And I think you're going to have to get more minutes from Isla McDowell in this game. I like to see her play a little bit more. And if those reserves can give you those type of minutes, then I think you could be in really good shape in this game. I really do think that if you are able to, I don't want to say platoon swap like what Tennessee does, but if you're able to keep the legs fresh in a game that does end up being up tempo, if you're not able to control the pace a little bit, it could give you an advantage. But looking at the starting 5 too, defensively, I expect Raven Johnson to kind of get the Flau'jae Johnson assignment. Raven's the defensive player of the year for a reason. You're not going to find a better on-ball defender in women's college basketball than Raven Johnson. And I think she's going to have to be really big today too. And the thing about LSU that I think makes them prone to losing themselves this game, outside of just what South Carolina does defensively, is that they can get a little sloppy with the ball sometimes. They're only 43rd in the country in turnover rate, and they got a little sloppy with it yesterday. They didn't turn the ball over 20 times, but they got pretty close to that number. If you look at the assist turnover numbers for LSU, it was 19 assists and 18 turnovers. I talk a lot about risk assessment when it comes to your guards, right? Because sometimes a high risk pass could be necessary to create an easy bucket. But if the window's really tight and you don't throw the ball exactly where it needs to be, or you don't put it in the shooter's pocket, or you don't make that bounce pass to where it can't get deflected, it does oftentimes result in turnovers. LSU does not, like, they will make a lot of high risk passes. And the way South Carolina plays defensively with their gap help puts them in a lot of positions to be able to steal the ball. Now, that's one thing that Raven Johnson's talked a lot about over the last few years, not just this year. This has been a last few years thing where she's emphasized, being sound in your gaps, playing good gap help, meaning if somebody is driving, you're not necessarily switching over onto that defender, but you're stunting or showing and you're stepping in front to at least slow that ball handler down a little bit to where you can still recover to the person that you are guarding. A lot of times, just that show of help or that stunt can allow an offensive player who's on their dribble drive to hesitate a little bit. Once you hesitate a little bit, maybe you lose your dribble or you throw it away, try to make that kick out pass where Raven's able to recover, whoever the off-ball defender is, to be able to recover. I think they can bait LSU into a few of those turnovers. And then just on the flip side of that too, for South Carolina, yesterday, the most impressive thing to me, I could reel you off all the scoring individual stats from players like Joyce, or the double-double from Medina Okot, or the early buckets you got from Raven when Kentucky went zone and she kind of shot him out of it a little bit. But the main positive was that you went through an entire first half against that Kentucky team with 13 assists and only 3 turnovers. And you ended the game with 21 total assists and only 11 turnovers. The assist turnover ratio is going to be a massive part of today's game because LSU rather thrives on forcing teams to turn the ball over. They're a top 10 defensive unit. And the reason they are so good defensively is because they make you shoot tough twos. They rim protect really well, and they will gamble a lot for steals. And a lot of times when they make that gamble, they get it. And someone like Mylasia Fulwiley, who we've seen here, is really good at picking your pocket if you're not strong with the ball. And I think what gives South Carolina a little bit of an edge there is that they've played against her, in practice. Raven Johnson, Tessa Johnson, those guards that are going to be on the floor have played against her in practice. They know exactly how good she is at back tapping the ball or blocking a shot from behind. That's something for, Joyce has probably emphasized to the forwards that, hey, look, she is no stranger at blocking shots. Even though she's not the tallest player on the floor, she is a really good shot blocker. And if you're not strong with that ball going up, she can reach up from behind you and be able to block the shot. LSU thrives on that type of stuff. LSU's opponents only shoot 37% from 2. And it's not because they dominate with their size. They have good size. They don't dominate with that size, though, but they're really good at blocking shots. They time their jumps really well. You can't have a lot of shots blocked in this game. They'll converge on you in the post. Medina's going to have another good game where she's making a high volume of the look she gets around the basket. It's a really intriguing matchup because both these teams are top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. South Carolina top 5 in both categories. But there are a couple of these little things here that can ultimately be the separators. And that's what we're looking for when breaking this game down. It's what are the separators for South Carolina in this game? To me, taking care of the ball is number one. That is most vitally important. One of the reasons why LSU is so good in transition is because they do force a lot of live ball turnovers, right? There are 2 different types of turnovers. There's throwing the ball out of bounds, trying to make a cross-court pass, or dribbling it off your foot and the ball going out of bounds. Is it bad because it takes away any chance at getting a shot? Yes. But is it the worst thing in the world because you don't have it as a live ball turnover and the other team can't just go out and transition on the run and be able to shoot layups? That helps. That alleviates that a little bit. You don't want turnovers on possessions, but if I have to pick whether it's a live ball or a dead ball turnover, I'm taking the dead ball turnover any day, especially against this LSU team, where Kim Mulkey's team thrives at turning you over, then them getting out in the fast break, shooting layups on the other end. And that's how they get to, scoring totals like yesterday where they drop 112 on Oklahoma, or like they've done against many opponents this year, and that's breaking triple digits. They do that because of how good they are at forcing turnovers. That's a big thing today too. And that's where Raven Johnson's going to have to be that senior veteran presence at point guard to protect the ball. This is a big game for Joyce too. We've seen Joyce at times this year too, when she gets a double team, maybe turning the rock over a little bit, or getting stripped, or maybe throwing the ball away, making the right pass, but maybe not making it with the right velocity or the right timing, right? That's got to be a big thing for her today. To me, the Joyce Edwards point total will matter to a degree, but that's not going to be what makes or breaks this game. I think the thing with Joyce is, can she still make off the dribble without creating those live ball turnovers and creating a secondary break from LSU? If she's able to do that and she's able to score 15 points and drop off 3 or 4 assists in this game, I think you get from Joyce Edwards what you need from Joyce in this game. And that goes along with playing sound defense and being able to get enough stops to generate the win. But I think the most important thing is the player that I'm most intrigued with in this starting 5, just due to the matchup, is Tania Latson. And Tania, scored a very quiet 9 points yesterday. I was joking with, a pal, Mingo Martin from Gamecock Central, and he goes, Tania had 9 points. I don't remember seeing any of them, right? And because it was a very quiet 9 points. But we know what the scoring ceiling for a player like Tania Latson is. And that scoring ceiling is being the best scorer in college basketball. She was last year. There's a reason she scored over 25 per game at Florida State. She has that capability. And I think that capability makes her dangerous in this game. And if there's anything anybody remembers from that win at LSU, it is Kim Mulkey in the huddle, screaming to her team, begging, imploring, just trying to find whoever it is who can answer to it, asking, who can guard Tessa? Who can guard Tessa? Can somebody guard Tessa? And what they did was just face guard her for the rest of the game. It helped the rest of the offense get more advantageous matchups, maybe more straight line drives. Tessa's gravity outside of hitting those threes early helped win you that game. And it helped create all the offensive production that you really needed to go over the top and end up winning it. I think you're going to see early on them maybe have not the same type of face guarding on Tessa. If I'm having to kind of bet on what defensive coverage LSU is going to throw at South Carolina, it's going to be clearly a man-to-man defense where whoever's guarding Tessa Johnson, maybe you don't have to follow her all 94 feet of the floor, but whenever Raven or Tania get on drives, not helping off of her. Or if Joyce catches the ball at the elbow and she's driving, don't help off Tessa to converge on the post because they don't want to leave her open. And if you're LSU, maybe you can live with Tessa burning you from 3-point range the first time, but then you see what she did yesterday and hitting the triples that she did. And you're probably thinking to yourself today, okay, she's out of the little minor shooting slump that she had. Tournament Tessa's here. We might not have to face guard her 90 feet across the floor, but just don't help off of her. Don't allow her to catch in rhythm and be able to shoot. So for South Carolina, if that's the defensive coverage that you're going to see in this game, it's going to be mightily important for Tania Latson to finish through contact and for Raven Johnson to be able to get into the paint and see if you can force help somewhere else. If you can force help from the block, that should open up a pass to Medina Okot, or if Joyce is playing off ball, it could be able to force help off of those players, and the dump off can be there. Really, what not helping off of Tessa would do is allow for less bodies to converge on you on your drives. So finishing around the basket, again, I think I said that a lot this year. And one of the reasons why this team has won all the games that they have is because they've been so good at finishing around the basket. This is a team that's making over 70% of their shots at the basket. It's one of the highest percentages in women's college basketball. And I think that is a huge part of this team's success. And they're going to have to do that today because the looks within 5 feet of the basket are going to be a little more advantageous if LSU doesn't help off of Tessa Johnson. Now, defensively, maintaining dribble drives, sticking on Michaela Williams is going to be really important. I think we talk about LSU so much, and so much of the discussion is Mylasia Fulwiley or Flau'jae Johnson, but Michaela Williams, generally one of the best tough shot makers in women's college basketball. And you're going to have to concede a few possessions where she hits a shot with a hand in her face because that's the type of player she is. Michaela Williams is so good off of the dribble, so good in the mid-range, so good on the three-point catch and shoot that you might have to concede a few buckets that are given up because she's just that good of a shot maker. Can you live with that? And can you be able to emotionally handle the ebbs and flows in this game? And I think because of Michaela Williams' tough shot making ability, Flau'jae Johnson's ability to get to the basket and draw fouls, and as physical as LSU's bigs normally play, I think it's going to be a game where LSU is going to make some runs, kind of like what they did in Baton Rouge, where they had a little bit of a run at the end of the first half, or at the end of the first quarter, rather. And you're going to have to be able to emotionally fight through that. Now, the plus is we're playing this bad boy in Greenville. We're going to be tipping off in Bon Secours Arena, and that's where this game is going to be played. And it's going to be a home court advantage for South Carolina. Even yesterday in the quarterfinal, right? It was a packed house. It was all garnet and blacked out. It's going to be that same way today. And I'm going to go and say right now, the intrigue of Malaysia Fulwiley playing in this game, it was juicy when they played in Baton Rouge for sure. That element and that storyline was certainly there. And if you've been on, FAM's Twitter, a lot of discourse that I might not be as willing to dive into when it comes to a lot of the off the floor stuff in terms of animosity between Malaysia Fulwiley and the University of South Carolina, but it's going to be hostile for LSU. The tension between these two programs has been high for the last few years, ever since Kim Mulkey really took the job and became a real threat to Dawn Staley in the program. Even though they haven't beaten them, they've had some really good games. They've had some good matchups. And obviously both teams are national title contenders on a year in, year out basis. But the emotional drive in this game is going to be so high. The emotional tension is going to be so high in that arena. And that's what I'm looking forward to. These are the basketball games that I live for, right? And lucky enough to be able to be on the floor and see it so close, see it firsthand, that I am so amped for this game. And whenever Malaysia touches the ball, I'm going to expect some boos. And if you're a fan, you should. You should. This is basketball. This is competition, right? This is what we live for. And the stakes are so high in this game because you have the streak against LSU you don't want snapped. B, this win could really help boost that resume. Again, the resume stuff's kind of on the back burner for me. And I take, certain bracketology things with a grain of salt, but I do genuinely believe that if you're able to win this SEC tournament, you present an incredibly strong case to be the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament, despite UConn not losing any games at all. And despite UCLA having by far and away the most quad one wins of anybody in the sport, I still think the resume of teams that you have beaten, especially if in a hypothetical scenario, you get Texas tomorrow in an SEC title game and you beat them. That's 2 wins against Texas, and the only loss coming in November on a neutral site in Las Vegas. I think that loss is pretty much well redeemed, and then you're given a slip up at Oklahoma. Okay, fine, whatever. Oklahoma's still going to be a really high seed. That's still a top 10 team that you lost to on the road in an overtime game. I think you could look at that resume and compare it to UCLA and UConn, and it's a discussion. Whether or not I would put them there is another thing, but I think it is a valid discussion, and you put yourself in that overall number one seed valid discussion if you take care of business today and win tomorrow too. That's one thing that's at stake. Winning another SEC title is at stake. Dawn Staley loves to cut down the nets. They love to bring the ladders out and cut down nets. That's what this program does. And you've already won the SEC regular season. It could be another cool thing to be able to have another SEC title to add to Dawn Staley's impeccable record as the head coach at the University of South Carolina. There's that, the animosity, everything that's at stake. The stakes are incredibly high in this game. And this is a quintessential college basketball game. I certainly can't wait. Before I get out here, I will say my one prediction for this game is South Carolina wins, and I say they win by 7. But I think it's going to be a really close game, and I think the 7 points kind of comes later with maybe LSU missing some shots and having to play the foul game. And I trust this Carolina team at the free throw line to be able to put it away if they need to. And that's how I see this thing going. And I see, us getting South Carolina versus Texas part 3 tomorrow in Greenville. But it should be a fantastic game. Follow us along at 1075 The Game on Twitter, here on this very YouTube page at The Game TV Radio. And don't forget, too, that this show and all of my coverage over at the SEC tournament in Greenville is going to be sponsored by our friends over at Griffin Pools and Spas. Look, it is a beautiful day outside. And before I head up to Greenville, I'm going to step outside. I'm going to enjoy the fresh air. I don't have a pool, and that makes me jealous of everybody who's going to take advantage of Griffin Pools and Spas 50th anniversary sale. It's a family-owned and operated business. They've been in business for a long time. Again, 50 years, 20 years before I was even born. But they've been doing this for a long time, and the discounts are awesome. The sales are great. A $500 discount on above-ground pools, $950 savings on all spa purchases, and it's 12 months no interest financing on spas, above grounds, and liner replacements. And of course, they have all the spa brands you can think of: Bullfrog, Tropic Seas, Generations, Marquee, all of that. Swim spas are in stock. So don't forget to save thousands on in-ground pools too, with fiberglass and vinyl liner. All of that and so much more here this month with the Griffin Pools and Spas 50th anniversary sale. So don't wait, and shout out to Griffin Pools and Spas for sponsoring our coverage. I'll do this again after the game to give you my reaction to what happens today. And then, of course, an overall thought at the end of the SEC tournament. And if they win today, well, then we'll be doing the same preview again tomorrow before I head to Greenville. But until then, make sure to listen to the game today, be able to lock in on TV if you're able to watch it. And I will see you here soon.